Yeah, hi everyone. This is Vatsal Shah, your host for the event. And now we have a wonderful session and we have a team of Accenture with us, starting with Sanjeev Munjal. He's MD of Accenture Interactive and focuses on transformation of customer engagement and commerce to make it relevant to contextual integrated experiences across all touch points. So we will have a great insightful session, and he is joined by his two of the teammates, which is Akash, Saluja, and Bipul. So over to you guys, and hoping to have a wonderful session.
Thank you very much, Vatsal, and thanks for having us on this call. Let me do the screen sharing. So, morning everyone. This is Sanjeev, and as Akash and Bipul is with us as well to kind of talk about future-ready digital commerce. The subject itself talks about, what should we expect out of this session? What should we expect out of this session essentially is, we continue to invest, we continue to see different trends, and we continue to have certain troubles despite so much of investment in our digital commerce, and we continue to have challenges. But when we look at the kind of newer things coming in the future, we also have to look back and see whether are we ready to basically, is our systems ready, or do we have our digital commerce in such a position to take advantage of what's coming our way, rather than these things actually hurt us so much in future. Before that, I think let's have a look at what's the experience dilemma or the shopping experience dilemma that we generally go through. We continue to invest into digital channels. Where we land today is what we invested yesterday. It becomes not just a problem, but it's also a roadblocker for us, kind of a shortcoming for us. Just if we give an example, a few years back we were talking about mobile first kind of approach. A lot of companies, a lot of organizations started looking at the mobile first kind of an approach. What it is leading toward is, our whole focus is toward one single channel. A lot of investment went in, but when we look at, how the channels are changing, we see, the channel is very, very specific. The whole ecosystem that we design is basically focusing on, to support the mobile first approach, which is not true today. In fact, if we go back and look at some of these challenges or some of those investments, we find, we should have done it differently. So what's it leading to is, one, it is leading to a very suboptimal experience across channels. Maybe one of those channels are operating extremely well, but when it comes down to, if you put all channels together, whether it is, your experience between web to mobile, to maybe the experience is shifting away from web and mobile a lot, and moving toward a lot of newer things, and we'll talk about it as well. So are we having the same experience? Are we having a contextual experience? Where I leave my journey, can I start from there? Some of these problems continue to be, not just look and feel, but the user journeys as well are very different nowadays. When we look at the other problem that we have is the life cycle complexity. What do we mean by life cycle complexity? In terms of when we have to onboard newer vendors, newer products, or newer catalogs, it goes by its own life cycle. It becomes so complicated and sometimes even becomes a kind of an IT project for us. So how do we reduce some of those challenges today? When it comes down to reduce flexibility, we have certain solutions today in our organization where we continue to have we are not able to stitch in newer channels faster. We are not able to bring in newer experiences much faster. We are not able to orchestrate newer experiences faster. And obviously this results into a huge amount of cost, but a significant loss in revenue that we lose to another competition. So with that, I'll go next in terms of, what do we expect? I think if we look, the previous slide was a lot about where we are. And this slide is a lot about, what's happening in today's world. If we look at, the kind of channel that are adding up, be it a virtual assistant, there's so many virtual assistants getting in. We see experiences getting through the augmented reality. This sales channel specifically for commerce, not just limited to the visual stuff, it's also getting through the, the physical stuff as well. For example, Internet of Things, in-car experiences, wearable devices, so many other things that get in. Your smart refrigerators, or a lot of other things that we should start thinking about. These are some of the new experiences really taking shape already. It's not something that is future yet. It's already kind of a, challenges that we continue to see today. And AI and cloud is also a reality. But what's coming forward? If you look at some of the things at the bottom, so for example, 5G, for example, if we have to talk about blockchain, and if we also have to talk about the very recent stuff called the metaverse, we also have to see, one hand, are we really connected to almost all of these exploded number of channels? Are we really using that to our best? The second question is, what if, let's say, 5G comes along and it's not very far? What if we are supposed to start selling on Meta? We can't have applications. We can't have kind of monolith big applications which we can actually deploy using 5G. The combination of 5G and edge will require us to deploy very, very micro apps at the edge. For example, if you have to have in-car buying experience, which changes, and that kind of micro apps that you're looking at, and that to real time, I think some things that 5G and edge will allow you to do. But we have to really go back and look at different components and nuggets that we have in our technology architecture, and also how it is stitching together. And I think with that, what we should do is we should dip into a bit of some of those imperatives that are important to kind of, these elements are very, very important to see, when we invest in digital commerce, when we start setting up digital commerce. First of all, these elements are there or not? If they are there, are they in the right form and shape in terms of the structure and architecture? So with that, I think I'll hand it over to Bipul, who will talk through this, and we'll also give you a few examples. Bipul, over to you.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Thanks for putting the context, and good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible, and Sanjeev, thanks for explaining the why, and that was so important to lead us, and it is an important segue for us to come into this conversation where the next obvious question is what, right? So what exactly do enterprises need to do to ensure that they are future ready? And obviously there is a plethora of options available, as all of us are aware, right from the technology space to the functional space to the business space to the infrastructure deployment, etc. But of course, there is a level of decision making that needs to happen across the enterprises with her, and working with the clients, we have come to a reasonable conclusion that there are a set of imperatives which are going to be foundational building blocks right? Both from a technology angle as well as the capability angle, which should form a part of the strategy, both from technology and business for pretty much all of the e-commerce across industry sectors as we dive into the future, right? So it at least enables us to be future ready so that any changes in future allow us to be more flexible and nimble if we were to adapt to them. And the first of obviously the underlying planning is what is your foundational architecture needs to look like, right? And that trends have changed over the years, right? And it has changed from a monolith. It went on to Web 2.0. It went on to a set of platform suites which were offering a plethora of capabilities exposed through a set of APIs. Now there is a trend that we are catching up on, which is known as composable architecture, right? And the way to understand it, or at least an analogy that we keep drawing our inspiration from, is something known as, you walking into a restaurant versus walking into a food court. Now, the difference is that the food court allows you, the vendors, to offer what they are best at. And the customers also have a greater choice in terms of what capabilities they want to tap into, right? So that is what the composability of a solution needs to be like, right? So you reach out even for a commerce application, and if you were to draw parallels, if you were to reach out for, let's say, your pricing, your search, and then there are your core commerce features, each of the experiences, right, that get offered by these platforms can come from different endpoints. And that gives the customer as well as the client greater flexibility on how we want to stitch it together. And so long as there is a plug and play mechanism, so that if we were to change, we have greater options on how we want to go about it. So that's very important, the composable aspect of your architecture. The other is the headless point, right? And again, if you go back to the example of a food court versus all-in-one restaurant, all of us would know that the vendors at a food court do not really own the presentation experience on the table, right? So that is something which is kind of abstracted from the vendors themselves. And they focus again on doing what they are best at, right? Whether it is in terms of serving the food or whatever the type of food that they're going to offer. So again, your headless architecture again has to be an imperative, which pretty much becomes table stakes these days, right? It's not that you can be in a state where maybe a few years back you would have probably gotten into a discussion as to whether we go this way or that way. I think these days, if we were to be future ready, the decision making has to be upfront that we want to be headless. And of course, the initial leg up is something that you would have to deal with, but then it offers greater flexibility, scalability as you go along and expand to different channels. The third is the API framework itself, right? And in the API framework, obviously the important aspect of it is, and again, keep going back to that example of a food court where there is interoperability between the restaurants and the customers, which makes the experience for the customer that much more seamless. They don't have to adhere to different norms as they go from one vendor or one counter to the other. So that is what the API framework or the microservices architecture gives you. So that again becomes an important imperative for the foundation of your technical parts. And then you have cloud, right, which is the nativity of the cloud itself. It is not just saying that you are going to be on cloud, but it is about what do you do by being on cloud. And if you were to again draw a parallel, right, the possibility of sharing resources brings down the cost that eventually customers or client have to pay for, right? And that again applies to a food court as well, where you, at the end of the day, you have greater options. And all of us would know that a bill at a food court will be much lower than when you walk into an all-in-one restaurant. But having said that, those are the alternatives that have come about. And if you were to be future ready, you have to follow these paradigms, or at least be prepared to tap into all four of them in the model of being more flexible and as you acquire more capabilities all along. And then the underpinning of all of that is the data and analytics piece, right? Which gives a 360-degree view of the customer. And that's absolutely going to be important if we were to compete with the likes of Amazon and Flipkart, where you own the end-to-end experience, right from the acquisition of the customer to conversion to their retention across the customer journey. And this is where your three pillars become important. right? So if you look at the first pillar of capabilities, it focuses more on the acquisition. So the acquisition should be your primary goal. And as you reach a certain scale, you start delving into the conversion aspect of it, where you bring in things like search becoming intelligent. That means that if I were searching for something and then there is a whole other customer segment, they get different options or the different search results based on their browsing and order history, right? Which is easier said than done. And that the data, and again, the underpinnings that come with the architecture and the data analytics bit, they become the driving force there. And then you have the conversion of content management, right? Now, content, obviously, commerce has, at least in the, when you look at some of the spaces of direct to commerce business, content becomes the enabler for you to ensure that you go and do a purchase. It is not just saying that, you know what, I have this product, I have this service, and there is a list of info that I can show to the customer at the point when he or she is about to make the purchase. I think it is more about how do I enable the customer to and nudge the customer into buying something through the content and the blogs and the videos that I create, which pretty much becomes the foundation building block for enabling your journey, as opposed to just doing a point in time purchase. Hyper personalization is again something which is very, very real time. It ensures that where I am, be depending on what mood I'm in, what is the time of the year that I'm interacting with, all of that comes into play to enable my journey of search, enable my journey of purchase, and enable my post-purchase journey as well. So it is not just about collecting one cohort of data, but it is about collecting a whole stream of data across the spectrum to ensure that hyper-personalization takes shape. And then finally, if you were to keep engaging customers so that they keep coming back to your site, or for that matter, your channels, then you have to ensure that customer service, loyalty, fulfillment, and returns are absolutely best in class. And there can absolutely be no compromises, because that is where our marketplace model would differ from an inventory-driven model, and where your business becomes that much more engaging for the end customer, and they are more likely to keep coming back through various channels, as Sanjeev was mentioning earlier. Even though the proliferation of channel happens, right? Whether you go to WhatsApp, whether you go to the non-traditional channels of social commerce and start your buying journey. So your social commerce and your influencers become your brand ambassadors, which ensure that they lead the customer inorganically or organically to your site, and finally you do the purchase. So this is what our view looks like, which I assume we all hope that will help in the decision making. And there should not be any two ways about what you should choose or what you should not choose. It pretty much sets the direction as far as your digital commerce business and making it future ready is concerned. And of course, the capabilities are going to evolve, right? Where we are today and something like COVID hits, then you're obviously forced to digitally transform. But that journey becomes that much more seamless. And with the likes of, let's say tomorrow, as we talked about metaverse, or whether you get enablers like AR and VR, which are going to be bolstered by the 5G cohort that is going to come in future, right? Which is going to make it as much more seamless and as much more possible, which is still in the works at this stage. So that pretty much forms our construct of capabilities and technology foundation underpinned by data, and then your analytics, which is going to drive your customer journey and your purchase journey. So that's the imperative bit. And with that, and after we've explained the what, this is a very abstracted or high level view of what the how, right? So how do you go about cracking this puzzle, right? Because it's not easy to actually say that, yes, these are the things that we need, but at least there needs to be a blueprint that our customers and client or all of us can tap into, so that it becomes a starting point. So if you look at it, this is divided into pretty much about 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. the topmost layer is the system of experience, right? And then you have, which pretty much offers, which engages the customer on the channels, offers them different experience, which is, again, the important bit here is that it is decoupled from the system of engagement, which is what you see as content and commerce down below, which are more providers of data and service. So tomorrow your channels can proliferate, your customer base can increase, but that need not necessarily require any changes or vice versa if you were to adapt to the situations. And that is why the separation of concerns via an API gateway and API management layer pretty much becomes an important aspect. Something like, I mean, like in the earlier days, you would obviously have chosen REST, but we have options of GraphQL as well, which allows you to, you know, have a single endpoint and exchange data rather than keep changing your endpoint depending on what your data needs are going to be. And finally, there is an enterprise integration, which is going to decouple your system of record with a system of engagement, right? So, so that's the important bits of or key elements of the architecture, and all of this is going to be backed by cloud. Of course, Magento, Adobe, Sensei, and Adobe Magento are important pillars, which we see are pretty much there in the direction, and we have pretty much engaged with a lot of our clients who adapt to use these platforms to ensure that we are tapping into these experiences and future ready. Now, with that, with that brief intro, this is one of the examples that we would like to bring in forward, where ordering, and which is from a utility client, where the utility client, so a utility client will have a distributor, like, you know, distribute electricity, you distribute gas connections, and then you will have vendors, and then the vendors will have customers. Now, if you see, there are 3 layers that you're talking about now, but the ordering pretty much is in control of the distributor themselves. Now, how do you enable ordering as a service for all your vendors across geographies or across localization, so that they do not have to set up a platform of their own, right? So that investment is pretty much taken away, and you give ordering as a service. So tomorrow, if they expand from 1 million to 10 million customers, all they need to do is that use the service that you offer as from the distributor channel itself and give it to your end customer, and then you're done, right? And be it your WhatsApp, or be it your social channels, or be it your web or responsive web apps, or whatever, they have each, and then of course you can go to their homes and then sell the utility benefits or plans to the end customer, all through a seamless experience, which is offered through a service offering. So it's not really about creating channels, creating platforms, and reinventing the wheel, which has been very, very successful. You can auto configure bundles and packages, combining data from multiple vendors and data sources. So you can have a product of the distributor, and then the retailer can have a product of their own and configure a bundle which can be presented to the end customer. And the pricing and inventory can be something which is more in control of the vendor themselves. So, and of course, the payment and reconciliation and billing is all taken care of through an automated workflow. So that pretty much forms the one of the key examples. It is a departure from some of the usual traditional sets mindset that you might see in the retail world. But utility is, I think the important point to drive here is that utility is also a space which is becoming largely commerce and transformation oriented. It's not just the fashion and food and beverages, which is becoming future ready. So that's the power that transformation journeys and these architectures give to you, where the industry differentiation is pretty much becoming boundaryless, right? You can pretty much have a template for all your industries. So with that, I hope that this information and this conversation helped us to make some key decision, understand the why, and also step into the how of it. And thanks, of course, to Sanjeev. Akash is obviously our lead from the Magento stream, and we'll be happy to take any questions, or if you have any follow-ups on that. And Sanjeev, Akash, any closing remarks that you might have?
Oh, thanks. I think let's given the time, I think let's open up for question and answers as well. Thanks, Bipul. Vatsal, if you have any questions coming up, we can take one or two, but we can continue to you can continue to write to us, and we will continue to see offline as well. And later point in time, we can address any questions.
We have a couple of questions. How can retailers ensure that digital experience is zero friction?
It's a very good topic. When we talk about friction, essentially, I think my interpretation about this friction is, you have different channels, and when you try and connect through different channels and different way that you set up your technology at the backdrop, that creates kind of a friction. A lot of friction that we have seen. All of the retailers, they start investing in a point solution. Say for example, you start looking into commerce as a separate application, and then you start looking at your experience layer, your loyalty as a separate system, and then your marketing as a separate system, your personalization as a separate system. It is very important to look everything holistically because they're fairly integrated. Two elements that I would suggest is, one, you need to have everything converging to a single application end of the day. Your API layer should ensure, or your microservices and API layer should ensure that everything passes through the same experience layer. Whatever channel that you want to connect to, first of all, your underneath enterprise application plus your experience application layer should be designed in consistent way and should be single way. And then on top of it, exposing services, or business services and microservice to different channels remains the same as well. So that way you can remove a lot of friction in that sense.
And Sanjeev, if I add on top, so agility is also booming, right? So we try to add the agility with the architecture as well. And there are multiple technologies where we are talking about microservices, exposing microservices, right? So there are behind the scene, there is abstraction and a lot of technologies involved. So we are in the world where we can try and test things, right, without impacting the front-end applications. When we talk about microservices, it abstracts the back-end technology. You can keep on changing it if something is not suiting to your business in future. Be agile, change it without impacting any front-end part of it.
Wonderful. Yeah, Vatsal, any more questions? I hope that we were able to do a satisfactory answer, but yeah.
One last one is how to repurpose brick and mortar stores to suit best support to the customer experience in future.
That's a fantastic question. In fact, lot of brick and mortar stores, and if I get the question well, you're saying how do we utilize the brick and mortar stores and repurpose them for, I think here we're talking about a lot about marketplaces. Here we are talking about a kind of store specific, your digital presence and online store. So if it is, so first of all, I need to, apologies, I need to understand the full context of the question. I'm assuming that this question is more from a perspective of a brick and mortar,
it's towards omni-channel experience, like in-store D2C brands or maybe retail chain and connecting to the online world.
All right, okay. So if we have to look at omni-channel experience, there are few nuggets and important elements that have to be there. First of all, your underneath order management capabilities and your, I would say, your warehouse management capabilities should be streamlined and common between online and offline store. Then when you talk about your promotions, your I would say any sort of discounts and vouchers that you are sending, those have to be common as well. So if you're it's very, very important that you identify, that's the first point, that you identify your consumer or customer at any touch point. It is not just when we talk about omni-channel, we generally talk about physical and digital store. It goes beyond it as well. So omni, as a word says, any touch point where customer comes, you have to treat the customer the same way. The same experience has to be there. Identify the customer, the same set of service, same set of personalized service if there is a personalization attached to it. And if there are discounts offered, different places. But if you're looking at solutions like buy online and deliver in store, the kind of BOPIS and PROPIS kind of solutions to make it happen, then extremely important aspect in that sense is your logistics and supply chain process is also aligned. That your ability to pick up or buy something online, it gets delivered to your home. You may go back to the store and return it, or you buy in store, but there's some online process to pick it up from your home. Some of these things basically can be driven through the backend applications have to come together. And then your POS and in-store experience, not just in-store, and your digital experience or your, any other social channel experience as well. All of these things have to come together. But the core of it is identity of the user. That has to be the first step.
Right, and the key is that you look at these services more as domains, right? And then you divide your technical capabilities and bucket them into domains like search and promotions, which kind of have a centralized data store. And at the end of the day, they can serve multiple channels, whether it is as you talked about, physical versus digital. But so long as you keep them all as a kind of a single data store being served, where your backend application is very monolith, but you have just APIs and services being offered to the front end, that does not help. So that's a key differentiator when we look at, and as Sanjeev mentioned, your returns and management is pretty much going to be the key, and order fulfillment is going to be key when you look at the combining the physical and digital worlds, right, from brick to the online space. So that's absolutely true.
Thank you. It was a wonderful session, and I think the people in India and APAC must have enjoyed it. Thank you, Akash, Bipul Singh, and Sanjeev ji. It was wonderful to have you here.
Thanks very much.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.